Hey everyone, welcome back to the Good Fight Marriage Podcast. I'm Josh.
And I'm Sydney.
And we're going to talk today about locking down my devices.
If you want all the groundwork, our personalities a little bit, how we got into porn, how we got into being addicted to porn, you can find all of that in the previous video. But this video is just kind of diving right into why we locked down his devices, why I needed a total lockdown. And so many people don't think that it requires this length of measures that we have taken. But I think out of everyone that we know, we have been the most successful in this area. I think there's not much transparency in this topic. So how can we know for sure? I don't know. But honestly, every wife that I've ever talked to about this stuff, they kind of get this glazed over look whenever I talk about it. Like, oh, I don't really want to ask my husband about those things. And that's up to them. But we choose to walk a walk that is extremely transparent, extremely vulnerable, intimate, raw, honest, difficult. Yeah, we want to know every single nasty little thing about each other. And because of that, there's like a purity that I feel like we both get to experience in marriage and as individuals.
It's like cancer. If you catch it early, it's a lot easier to deal with.
Right.
Addiction.
Yeah. Don't want to hit at stage 4.
Right. And not to catch. It's much easier to cure and bring healing and answers and solutions to addiction, porn addiction, at the early stages of the addiction, or the earlier in your marriage. Oh, who was I listening to? Blazing Grace, I think it was. And he said that he counsels people of all ages who are going through this, just finding out that their husband has been addicted to porn. And he said he's had guys, men in their 60s and 70s who have it's come out that they've been addicted to porn their entire marriage. And they've been married since they were 20. So 40 or 50 years of marriage, they've been addicted to pornography.
And in the support groups that I'm in, it's so sad for me to see these like 50, 60, 70-year-old women. And there's polls taken in these groups. These groups are samples of about 2,000 people each. So I'm in 3, and it's about 2,000 women in each group, because they poll for each other because they want to know, like, are old ladies dealing with this stuff? And they are. And it's sad because their husbands, the ones who have had an addiction that long, 30, 40, 50 years, they're the ones who do end up like getting arrested for having child porn and stuff, because if this addiction is something that progresses. And so it's just sad. These women are on the brink of divorce often. They're the ones who are at their wits' end because they've been dealing with it for a lifetime. And so when we say that we are super honest and transparent about this stuff, it's because we choose to learn from other people's mistakes instead of having to make them ourselves. And
let me finish what I was going to say about the 70-year-old thing. So to you, man, watching this video, if you're watching this, the further on you go into porn addiction, the worse it's going to be when your wife finds out. If you're hiding this from your wife right now, you need to feel a sense of urgency about getting this into the light, because darkness thrives when it continues to stay in the darkness. It's just like all those thriller videos. When the light comes, all the darkness is, shrieking back. You have to shed light on this. It has to see the light of day. Your wife needs to know. Your pastor needs to know. Pray God you're in a church where you have some support system behind you and around you. People need to know that you're struggling.
And you, the man, you yourself getting caught, you might not be the one seeking help. I've found that that's almost never the case. It's usually the wife bringing it forth with a therapist or with a pastor or something. And it's sad because they can't find a lot of help. This is only going to grow. So I've seen this cycle with so many people in these support groups. They keep bringing it to the light, but they don't stay consistent. And then it just gets worse and worse behind the scenes. The wife gets more jaded because nothing is improving. It's actually, you're bringing it to the light and it's only getting worse. So it's only creating this this monster of a problem that does turn into like worse betrayal, more divorce thoughts. And so many women are just like, thank God I'm free now from this marriage, this horrible thing that we tried to bring into the light. And I think it's just like Satan to shame someone for bringing it into the light and to make them feel even more guilty. But we kept it in the light no matter what. We keep bringing it to the light. We're not going to give room for darkness.
And you mostly did that. I mean, almost single-handedly, you were the one who instigated all of those conversations because I knew how much it would hurt you, and I did not want to.
And it feels like tattling on the wife's part.
I did not want to hurt you. I did not want to see you cry. And selfishly, I knew that I wasn't going to get sex. If you knew that I was looking at porn, you were going to be less likely to, like you didn't feel loved.
Right.
So I couldn't continue to lie and have my cake and eat it too. Have the porn and have sex.
Yeah. It's like your whole life has been a lie then. And your husband, like there's men who have like folders and folders of like 30,000 different porn stars and stuff on their computers that their wives are discovering with all these like firewall blockers and all these things that they've been able to get through. And the addiction can take you so far.
Yeah. That should never happen.
Yeah.
That should never happen.
Yeah.
There should never be file folders ever. Ever. And another thing I was going to say was every time the conversation came up, you were the instigator. But if I knew, like...
when he says I'm the instigator, he means I'm the one who asked accountability questions.
Right.
Like I'm the one who came to him and said, are you looking at things?
Right.
Is there anything you need to tell me? Because so many wives don't know that you need to be asking questions. An addict... They're in their own world. You got to break through and you got to ask the right questions because the liar, and I mean, I was a pathological liar at one time. I know it's like, well, if you don't ask me this question a certain way, then technically I can answer it
right
truthfully in some twisted way.
Have you been watching porn? No, I've been looking at porn.
Or like I haven't been looking at porn per se, but I've been looking at lustful imagery.
Right.
Or I've been seeing it on Facebook or Twitter or wherever people find it now.
Yep. And slowly but surely, it was this long drawn out process of, we locked my phone down. Then I found porn on Facebook. We got rid of my Facebook. Then I found porn on
the Books app.
Books app.
That was a bad one. Yeah. That happened while we were on a mission trip. And that was when I was like, oh, Lord, I did not know that this takes you this far. Because I had the internet cut off from me whenever I was addicted. And I didn't think to go through other avenues like that. I wasn't as creative. But when you're addicted,
you find a way.
Yeah. Like that's why homeless people end up trading their lives for crack, you know,
right.
Like an addict will do what it takes to get that hit, whatever they need.
Facebook, the Books app, Spotify. If your husband has, basically
Yelp is one where reviews of things like Hooters or strip clubs or
Twin Peaks.
Yeah, Twin Peaks. Any like promiscuous place like that.
They have pictures on them,
mm-hmm.
and it's YouTube, hard to admit.
I mean, I'm amazed that some women don't realize that. YouTube. Sorry, ladies, but
if your husband
we're
has
in 2023.
Yeah,
YouTube is not a great source for an addict.
If your husband has YouTube, Spotify, the Books app,
all social media, Instagram is an absolute no. TikTok is a no, hardcore no. I mean, incognito is an obvious no, and people who have the Truple app, I think that's how you say it. Where you have screenshots of things, I just do yourself a favor. You don't need those screenshots in your mind. You don't need to know what he's looking at.
Right.
Cut it off. He doesn't even need to be looking.
Right.
And so many wives are wanting this like magic moment where their husband just has full integrity. And he's shaking his head. And I'll say it has taken years for me to come to terms with this. In that I think this is just our story. And I'm very much a self-development person. Like I'm very much like, oh, that's a self-limiting belief. We can get there. We're winners. We can do it. But in this area, I do think this side of heaven, there is total freedom for Josh. It's the same way, like, think about your sin. Think about things that you struggle with, like whether it's sugar, whether it's gossip, whatever light sin that you have, self-righteousness within your own heart. Are you fully capable of being 100% pure and clean in that area that you particularly struggle with? I don't know. So I'm just going to say, like, for us, this has been the method that has gotten us closest to freedom. Because if an addict can't even taste freedom, I don't think they'll ever even desire it. Josh is 100% like free from sexual imagery and has been for quite some time now. And I don't think we could have ever gotten to this point with his own, with your own will. Yeah.
You
will
don't have the willpower. Your husband does not have, and you don't have. If you, the addict, you do not have the willpower to overcome porn addiction. Period.
And the Bible addresses lust and the promiscuous woman so many times and I don't know why we're so surprised as Christians when it's actually a vice. Like it's listed there several times. This is actually a vice for people. And I mean, freaking Solomon, the wisest man on the planet, had 700 plus wives and concubines. You're telling me that men don't have a struggle with this stuff? Okay. I mean, all right. If you want to live in that world, I don't live in that world. I live in a world where I acknowledge the severity, I guess, of sexual sin. Like, I understand that it is here and it is here to stay on this broken planet.
Yeah. I don't think any man who has his phone and complete access to everything on his phone and his TV and computers at home, computers around, computers at the office, especially if you own your own business and you don't have any safeguards. I don't think any man can honestly say that he doesn't struggle with it, at least somewhat. When we went to that AA meeting.
So we went to an AA meeting a few weeks ago just to learn more about addiction from a different angle.
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome. But
we're not alcoholics.
Right.
We only struggle with like one addiction in this household, I think.
Right. Yes. AA says that they all say this in the 12 steps. And I think it's the first step. We came to know that we were powerless against this addiction. And you have to know that your husband or your wife or whoever in your life, or if it's you are powerless against this addiction. And I know that contradicts. We've been in the charismatic church, and some of that stuff is hokey, and rebuking the spirit of lust and rebuking this and rebuking that.
I mean, we tried it.
We've tried that. I've been through deliverance.
So many angles.
And still struggled with porn on the other side of what, the charismatic church would call deliverance. So basically what I'm saying is we don't have the willpower. If you're relying on your willpower, you're going to fail, period. And so how I explain it to people...
Right. White knuckling it is a plan.
How I explain it to people is take yourself back to the time before porn really even existed. Take yourself back to the little house on the prairie. And the easiest way to do that is to get rid of all your technology and lock your phone down to the utmost degree. And that takes you basically back to 1948, plus or minus a decade, where if you want to look at porn, you will have to go find a video. You'll have to go buy it. And I've never even thought of this. So I don't think it would get to that point with most men unless they're absolutely addicted to it.
Yeah, some guys get burner phones and things once their phones are locked down.
Yeah.
And wives find these burner phones,
and that level of addiction is something that we will not be able to deal with in this podcast. If you have that level of addiction, we can't help you. You have to be you have to be willing and you have to have a desire to stop looking at porn.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to
So-
have that godly sorrow
Yeah.
toward it. And I'll say Josh has always had godly sorrow
Yeah.
about the addiction when he was deep in it. He never once like celebrated it. He always felt like the guilt and shame,
no.
which is a bummer because he was constantly living in guilt and shame for years,
Yeah.
which is such a low level to live your life at. And if anything, wives, you should want to fight for your husband to get out of those low existence. Like they need to be rising higher in areas of love and joy and peace and faithfulness and kindness
and prosperity. I would never be where I am today, prospering and succeeding at the level I'm succeeding, if I were still addicted to pornography.
And there's high level successful men who are addicted to porn, unfortunately.
But
it would have it would have held you back.
It would have absolutely held me back because I have a conscience and I haven't seared my conscience. So that's the thing. You're dealing with what the Bible talks about as a hardened heart. The more someone chooses sin over God, every time you choose sin over God, you choose to basically solder a part of your heart. And eventually, your heart becomes hardened. The Bible talks about this, and that we would want and hope for a heart of flesh, not a heart of stone. The best thing that could happen to your husband or your significant other who's struggling with porn addiction is that they get caught, because immediately that hardened heart is exposed, and the person is given the choice of, do I want to be humble and soften my heart? So the beginning of a softened heart is humility. And that's not in Scripture, but it's just how I see it. If you want to have a soft heart and be caring and loving and not callous toward your wife or toward your children, or you will see porn addiction has literally affected every area of your life. When you stop it, you will notice every area of your life will change. Your work will change. Your attitude will change. Your attitude towards your children, your attitude towards your wife.
Confidence.
Your confidence will be boosted. I'm telling you, I do things now. So Jocko Willink is a guy I listen to a lot. I love Jocko. He has a lot of great leadership stuff. Has written some amazing books on leadership. And one of the things he says is no free dopamine. And I literally told myself that this morning when I got up and got in the gym and did a 30-minute HIIT workout. No free dopamine. My weekend is not going to be me lounging around and then look
eating
up,
sugar,
eating
going
sugar.
to the bathroom to be alone.
When you are jacking off and looking at porn, that's free dopamine. I've got this theory that I really recently came up with, where it's basically I call it the comfort feedback loop. And it's where you keep yourself in a comfort zone. You're trying to get something out of it that it can never give you. What you don't know in that moment is what it's costing you. It could cost you your marriage. And I have a very unpopular opinion on this, and my pastor doesn't agree with me. In fact, no one agrees with me. Basically, porn is cheating. Porn is absolutely cheating. It's adultery. I mean, if we read the Bible, Jesus says, if you look at a woman lustfully, you've committed adultery in your heart. And we said that verse in the last video, but it is adultery, I think. And I think for you women, it's kind of a fine line. It's a gray area where, is it grounds for divorce? I don't know. Is he repentant? I think that's a big part of it. But definitely seek wise counsel and godly counsel on that.
And I think Josh is able to say that with a sober mind because he's free from it. I think so many men are hesitant to say that it's cheating because they actually don't have control over it yet. So they are like, oh, well, if I say that, then technically my
She
wife
can
could
leave me.
divorce me. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, but when you walk in purity, I mean, you're able to just see it black and white. You're just like, no, that's, I mean, if I look at porn, I feel like I'm cheating on my husband, honestly. Like I'm looking at someone else's body sexually and I'm getting aroused by it. I mean, I don't know. By definition, it's pretty clear to me.
Well, it's this attitude that, well, it's unavoidable. How am I going to stop?
Right.
I'm always going to look at it. It's always going to be there.
Right. It's the world we live in.
Right. And that is just, it just doesn't have to be the case.
Mm-hmm. And another great thing that we heard at AA was this thing. I loved it. They say you have to live life on life's terms. And some people could look at that and make an excuse for the porn. Like, well, you got to live life on life's terms. There's porn in the world. There's lust in the world. Girls are wearing booty shorts. But I choose to look at it from a different angle. Well, you have to live life on life's terms because these things exist. Take the measures that you need to take to stay free. Same with alcoholics. It's not like everyone's just going to stop partying or drinking or popping bottles on New Year's. Everyone's going to be doing that stuff. You've got to live your life on life's terms. That's what people do. Jesus brought wine to a wedding. What if maybe there were some alcoholics there, you know? That's the world we live in. And what are you going to do to put boundaries up for yourself so that you can stay free from a vice? And for us, it has been strict measures, which we're going to get into. Yes. So we already talked about all of the avenues for those things. So, but that's just on a phone. That's all the apps that we have needed to remove. So I'll say we have removed every single gateway app that there is. So like Josh doesn't have Chrome browser. He only can use Safari on an iPhone. And with iPhone, like I said in the last video, if you get on our email list, I will send you this PDF to lock down an iPhone. I'll link our website below. It's a page where you can easily put your email in. You get the PDF very quickly. I already have a few of you guys who have emailed. You've gotten your PDF. I hope that maybe your husband will be open to it. Most men won't be. And we're going to talk about that too. Josh's willingness to move forward with these things was all driven by him. None of this has been driven by me, the big bad witch, because in some of my videos, some people are saying like, oh, I can't believe that she does that. She's controlling it. I was not the one instigating this. Josh was the one who said, I need these measures put into place so that I can move forward. And I was like, well, crap. Are you like, does it really take that much? And that's a lot of these wives' attitudes in these support groups. Like, do I really have to treat them like a child? I mean, if you want to view it like that, I view it as more like you're helping your husband stay free. If you think that they're a child, they're not. If you haven't been addicted to porn, maybe you don't get it, but I have, and I understand.
Here's the thing with that. If sin makes him a child, then you also are a child.
Yes.
So to call your husband a child or to think that way is to, like, you're not thinking about your husband in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
You're going about it with the wrong frame of mind and the wrong heart. And I think
it's like Samson and Delilah too. One
of the big switches with us was when I started combating those comments and those things, because you would say things like that.
Belittling comments,
you would belittle. You would try to say things like that.
Right. I used the word baby several times. Like I would call him a baby, and that became like a no-go word. Like I do to that. Since we put that boundary in place, I've never called him a baby since. Because I'm like,
that is a no-no. Don't call me a baby.
Yeah, because it's disrespectful. Honestly, it really is. And I've learned, like Samson and Delilah. Samson was the strongest man. He took down all the Philistines with the whole temple. Like that's a crazy story, and he died, which is sad. But Delilah, this, sweet talking, pretty woman, got the best of him. And it's like you have to examine your husband. You have to view him in that way. And I've heard respect. The word respect means to look again. Means again, and spect is your eyes. So look again at your husband and view him as like that strong, godly man. And in that, you can say, oh man, I want to help that strong, godly man not fall prey to this vice that the Bible is very clear about being a vice. So I was like, oh my gosh, I respect him enough to help him put boundaries in place because he needs my help. And I don't even think the Bible didn't take help me to that level. Like, it's not so clearly stated.
Right. Like, this is the long list of 5 million
of all the
things
helpmate
that
things
you have to do for your husband.
But it's not good for man to be alone. And God made a helper suitable for him. And I think that totally applies under that scripture if you need scriptural reference. Like, he's not being a child.
You need to speak into his identity, his true identity in Christ, if he's a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
If he's not a Christian, then
that's a whole other host of problems.
That's an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
And
because what's holding them to any conviction?
You need a counselor.
Yeah, because if you guys are both just doing this with your own willpower and strength and white knuckling this together, that would not have worked. The only way it worked was Josh was convicted in his heart and wanted these parameters put in place. And I was convicted in my heart to help him as the Lord guided me to respect him and to fight the problem, not the person. And both of those two good-hearted desires working together with the Lord leading us was like the secret sauce that got us to where we are now. And so I wanted to say, I am not the big bad witch that is controlling. Josh asked for these parameters to be put in place. And so, like we said, the apps are all gone. Right. The gateway
and
apps.
I deleted, like, if I find a way, like if I'm really struggling in a season and I find a way, if I don't tell Sydney, I deal with it aside from that, and I delete it. Like Spotify, I think I deleted.
Right. And he ended up telling me like
own.
2 weeks later or something.
Yeah.
Which
and you didn't know.
Kind of pissed me off, but you know,
sure, it went too long.
Right. But at this point I have to honor that his heart was in the right place. Whereas when you guys are in the middle of the addiction and it's all such a mess, you really don't have to honor any of that. I mean, there's no trust. There's so many things that you're trying to weed through. It's like, oh, well, you had good intentions. Well, no, let's find out where all these intentions are. Let's get some grounds for all of this, because I know when you're both struggling with the lies and the addiction, it's like you have no clue how deep this goes. And some of these wives find out terrifying things when they go a little too far with finding everything out. So like some wives do like polygraphs and have their husbands do like lie detector tests and all that. We never had to go to that length because Josh, I'm pretty sure we're like 100%. We know everything about everything now.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, but fortunately.
Yeah. Like, and he always had a willing heart. So if your husband doesn't, you know, that's some prayer work you got to do there, and some like godly men in his life who can kind of knock down his door. But there's a lot of walls that some of these guys have. Thankfully, Josh is kind of a sweetheart and was pretty open from the start.
Yes,
with a lot of this stuff.
So sweet.
You really are at your core.
Yes. Deep down in there somewhere.
So we got rid of the apps. And then Safari, if you go to allowed websites only on content restrictions, which is in the PDF, you change that to websites that only you approve. And so you're going to have to make a passcode, and your husband might not like that. And y'all have got to get on the same page in that area. And we're going to be those voices. At least you have 2 voices on the planet that will back you up in this and say, it worked for us. It seems a little ridiculous, but honestly, we don't even think about it now. It's been almost 4 years of doing this, and Josh just hands me his phone to approve new websites. It could be something dumb like Cinemark, like he's checking movie tickets, or it could be golfing, or, he needs to pay a bill or something. And once you build up all the websites, then
it's much less annoying.
Right. But when you first start, it's like, really, you got to approve the city website or, whatever basic thing that you need. And I would caution wives, don't approve things like streaming accounts like Netflix or Paramount or Apple TV, because all of those are gateways. So I wouldn't be approving those websites. Like, say your husband needs to log into his account, he can do that on a monitored device that you have in the home, whether it's your laptop and I don't even want to get into personal laptops. If your husband has a personal iPad or personal laptop, you are going to have to.
Holy moly.
That just, honestly, I just don't even think that should be a thing unless he works in tech and,
Like, that's the point that you have to get to with porn, where you would rather throw your phone in the lake or your laptop or all your electronics. You have to get to a point where you are willing to throw it in the lake to never have to have that difficult conversation again.
Yeah, at one point Josh had a flip phone, which some husbands go to that length, but I just honestly, I even feel like it's not practical in today's day and age when you need navigation. Like, a phone is so much more than just a phone now. So yeah, if you're dealing with like a bunch of devices for your husband, then I mean, honey, saying that you are not tech savvy is not an excuse. If you truly care, you will figure it out. And we live in a day and age where you can make it happen with a few YouTube videos and Googling and understanding these things. And if your husband's more tech savvy than you are, then fine, hire somebody. Figure it out. It's not worth your marriage. It's not worth, the extreme cases of porn addiction are terrifying, and I highly recommend you read some of them, because you don't want your husband ending up with child pornography on his phone. You don't, or on his laptop. You don't want files and files. You don't want to go through all of that stuff. Make sure things are...
Or he starts hooking up with people, and then he accidentally hooks up with a 15-year-old.
Totally.
And the cops are there, and he's on 60 Minutes.
It's tragic.
That's what... porn leads to... much more. Porn, very rarely does porn end with just porn. And I say just porn very lightly.
Right, and we're going to talk about some like yucky stuff in another episode coming up, probably, just like the rock bottom of our marriage and things that I was considering to just appease. Because it's like part of you, a lot of wives are tempted to just hypersexualize themselves to compete with the porn. And that is completely the wrong approach.
Right.
You will never compete, no matter how far you're willing to go with your husband, no matter what fantasies you're willing to fulfill. It's not going to be good enough, and you will end up just feeling used in the end. And I'm grateful that we didn't jump off that cliff, because I felt the Lord in that, just saying like, do not open Pandora's box, because once you do that, it is so hard to go back. And I'm just so thankful that the Lord's hand was on us. And I just pray for anyone listening that you have the strength that you need. You have the willpower that you need. You have the grace to do this the right way. And it's hard, but these are the tools that have worked for us.
We need to do a flash 5 minutes of how we did it, how we locked down my devices, the process and the nitty-gritty, and what all it entailed and what it looked like over the course of the years. So the first thing, I think we locked down my phone, right?
I'd say the first thing I thought we needed to do was just keep holding Josh accountable. Like, I thought accountability would be enough, like questions and just maybe he'll tell me, but that's just, let's go ahead and just move on past that step and jump to lockdown. And I'll say, as a female addict, porn addict, I also needed total and complete lockdown, complete lack of access to any possible doorway to get to porn or lustful imagery. So as a female addict, as a wife, as someone who was deeply hurt and offended by it, I also understand that that is the measure that it took for me personally. And so for Josh, it was doing content restrictions with web browsers. So completely get rid of incognito, delete all other web browsers, no Chrome, no Firefox. The secret calculator app, if you know about those, they're secret apps that can pose as other apps. If you don't know that yet, if you're like an older lady who really doesn't know all of this, just Google it or ask your husband if he has any secret apps. You know, it's going to ruffle some feathers, but hopefully if you guys are trying to get real and transparent, you got to start somewhere.
Exactly. And maybe you have some younger people in your life that you can talk to.
Yes.
Like a younger wife at your church, somebody who's dealt with it before. You're not going to know who they are, more than likely. You're not going to know these couples at your church that are struggling with porn because nobody talks about it. So you're going to be that person that is the first person to say, hey, we're struggling over here with this thing that nobody really knows how to deal with. If you're an alcoholic, you decide, I'm not going to drink today, you pour out all the alcohol. If you're a cocaine addict, you get rid of all your coke.
if you're a heroin addict, and so on and so forth. You don't put heroin on the table as a heroin addict and you're like, I'm just going to trust my willpower, bro. I'm just trusting my chi and my, like,
I'm trusting
my
that I had a
mantras,
good day today.
and I had a good day, and I'm just strong. I'm strong enough to say no. No. Heroin addicts don't buy heroin if they're trying to recover. Alcoholics recovering don't buy alcohol. If you buy alcohol as a recovering alcoholic, the chances of you drinking that alcohol, about 100%, especially in the first few years of recovery.
So when we're giving you this radical why of why we have taken radical lengths to keep this stuff out of our life.
With that same talking about addiction, talking about alcoholism and drug addiction in the same light as porn addiction, which we should be talking about because it affects us the same way. The brain synapses, it keeps you in the comfort feedback loop. It dumps dopamine just like drugs.
Mm-hmm.
It is a drug, and it is destroying your mind and destroying your marriage, and it needs to be stopped. You have to stop it. You have to, and how do you do that? Nobody has the answers. Everybody just wants to talk about it or be accountable to somebody about it and lick each other's wounds about it. Like, oh, brother, I fell, or I'm struggling, or I stumbled. Like, let's quit using that language as well.
Right.
Like, I stumbled.
Mm-hmm.
What? No. Just grow up. I looked at porn. I watched lesbian porn. I watched, the grossest of the gross. Get real. Don't just be like, oh, I stumbled, brother. Like, you
Meanwhile,
need
you're
to
engaging in
feel,
hardcore material that is
Right.
warping your mind.
like, your stumble might be different than another guy's stumble. I'm walking through with a guy that struggles with homosexuality and homosexual porn. So that's a whole nother ballgame. It's like, how do I counsel someone having no experience with same-sex attraction? How do I counsel that person? Well, it's basically the same thing. It's all the same. It's addiction. So you have to get it out of your life.
Perversion.
Basically, you're an alcoholic, but your alcohol is porn. Okay? If you want to quit looking at porn, you need to pour all the alcohol down the drain. And the pouring all the alcohol down the drain looks like what we're about to tell you.
There's so much need for recovery from trauma. Like, we all know that about addictions. Addictions are just that person escaping emotion, and they're trying to use something to cope.
Yeah, but the alcoholic in recovery on day one is not asking the question, what in my childhood led me to this point? They're asking the question, can I go 24 hours without a drink?
Right. This is wrecking my life. I
need to stop today.
Totally.
I want to stop today. So if you're there and you want to stop, these are the radical steps that you have to do, in our opinion. And this is where we're probably going to lose some people because people are not willing to do this.
And I'll say this does require two people. It requires an accountability person who is strong enough to stick with you in this.
Yeah. And if your wife doesn't know and you absolutely don't want her to know, I think that's wrong and I don't think that's okay. But I think for the purpose, our goal is to get you healed and get you out of this addiction. So if you've got a buddy that you can be honest with and be like, hey, man, I am struggling and I found this video on YouTube. They said, here are the steps. Can you help me lock down my devices? I'm going to give you my iPad. I'm going to give you my computer. And can you lock down my phone with a code that you can't tell me? Do not tell me the code under any circumstances. And then it works like this where basically if you don't have a website unlocked, then you meet them for lunch, once a week, or it needs to be somebody who lives close to you, basically.
Right, because they need to be able to manually put the code in your phone. Let me just state what the step is. The step is to have the content restrictions in screen time. Right now in this iOS, you go to screen time and content restrictions, and in content restrictions, you can make a passcode. And that passcode needs to be something that only that accountability partner knows, because if you're having to call that person like, hey man, I really need to get into this website, can you just tell me the passcode? Well, then you're just, it's going to fail, because you need that hard boundary. You need someone to hold that hard boundary for you. And maybe it means your friend tells you no. It says, hey man, I'm not gonna tell you the passcode.
Right. But I'll meet you for a beer tonight, or I'll swing by your office and unlock it for a minute while you get the website, and then I'll lock it back down,
or download an app.
I'll unlock that website for you. Basically, for the first little while, it's going to be very difficult, because you're going to have certain websites. I would advise you to have that accountability partner go ahead and unlock the websites that you know you're going to need. So like your bill paying websites, your work email, if you have to log into a different email server and that is blocked, like go ahead and unlock all those.
But honestly, guys, like, do you really need your phone like that bad? Like, you know, there's so many ways that we can get the means to the end that we're trying to get at. And so the goal is for just keep it simple with your phone. Your phone now has become extremely simple. It is not a social media. It's not a social place. It's not a entertainment place. Josh's phone is not used for entertainment.
Zero.
Yeah, zero entertainment. He reads the news.
That's all.
But that entertainment piece that millions of us use our phones for, including me, that is not the case for someone who would struggle with lust.
Yeah, and honestly, I would say that that's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Not being on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but I get on my work computer every now and then, and just to check the news and see what Elon Musk is up to.
A few of our friends who we've helped do this and we've locked down their devices in this way, they cave. Like they're not willing to give up that entertainment piece. I would say it's like they literally, like, if I'm going to parallel it with the Bible, it's like, don't give up your birthright for a bowl of beans, like with Jacob and Esau. Like, really, like, social media is going to be the thing that keeps you in bondage for years and years and years.
But I like my TikTok videos.
Right.
That's where I get my news.
But dude, I love YouTube. I send memes back and forth to my friends, or I love Discord or whatever. It's like, okay.
Did you know that stuff has also been proven to be not beneficial to you?
That's
in
free
any way,
dopamine
shape, or
too.
form?
I fast from Instagram regularly. I delete my apps when I feel like they have taken too much of a hold. Honestly, I'm a mom, so I don't have a whole lot of time with that now. But there were times where it's like, okay, this is getting out of hand. I need to take a step back from this. And I would ask Josh to put a passcode. So we've taken those measures. And then this is where we get kind of crazy. And this is, if we haven't already lost you, this is where it gets even more crazy. For television and other entertainment in the home, be it Xbox or PlayStation, home computers. First of all, Josh has zero access to home computers. I have 3 in the home, and they all have passwords that he wouldn't know. And when I do leave, I would take the mouse, I would take the power cord, I would take anything that would allow access to it, because I just was kind of like sensitive in the early days of this. I just really wanted to make sure that those were not avenues that he would take if he were to be home alone. Anytime the wife is leaving the husband home alone, we would take the devices out of the home. So I would take my laptop. I would take, like I said, the power cord to my Mac. I would take remotes to the TV.
And it sucks.
It does suck. And Xbox controllers,
It
too.
sucks whenever the show is like, are you still watching this? And then it just sits on that screen forever. And you're just like, yes, I'm still watching it, but I don't have the remote.
I'd be like, Josh, do you want to watch this? I'll put it on before I leave.
Right. Put on Survivor, and then she would leave, and I would just watch, 3 or 4 episodes of Survivor, whatever plays, which is great. That's great.
Right. It's not like we don't need to be
It's
binging
fine.
anything anyway.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, if I have the remote, I'll be good, and then I'm not good. As soon as she leaves,
right,
not good.
Right.
It's like the
thoughts
thought
creep in.
starts to happen. It's like, oh, if I see the remote, I'm like, oh. Especially in the early days of porn addiction, if I would see the remote, especially like early in the morning when you weren't awake and I was, like I'd wake up at 5, and there'd be like 30, 45 minutes there where I could probably maybe get away with looking at porn. And I'd see the remotes out, like, oh, she forgot to put them she forgot to hide them last night. And I would think, like, it
Because
would go through
we
my
had a
mind.
lockbox.
It would go through my mind. I could look at porn right now. And there were probably a couple of times that I did.
Mm-hmm.
But we did have a lockbox. So basically, the phone, you got to lock down the phone, the Xbox, the TV remotes. So your Xbox controllers, your TV remotes, every night you should buy a little lockbox.
We got a
We can-
lockbox.
We can put a link.
And I
below.
did not. This was not my decision. So when people
Oh,
think
right.
that I would be crazy enough
Totally.
to do this was not my decision. This was Josh's decision. He was like, "Why don't we get a lockbox?" Because if they're out, it's that whisper, that temptation is going to be there, and I just want it to go.
Yeah.
And it took
the
some
beginning.
humility for me to think like, okay, do we really have to go to that level? But we did. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'll say it was after we had our first baby, and I was very, very sensitive, newly postpartum. And I kind of lost it. Like, I was like, we've got to do something different or I'm piecing out. Whether I think I was thinking about separation, it wasn't going to be divorce. It was going to be like, I was going to leave and I was going to take the baby with me. And if a lockbox and some honesty and some passwords can keep you from doing that, I mean, what are you waiting on? Honestly, it improved so much. I didn't think it would at the time. It feels so hopeless, but here we are 4 years on the other side of that. And the fruit is so good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, now you can leave and you don't have to worry
Yes.
about it.
I'll
You
ask
don't have to
him.
worry about the remotes. And then the other thing is, I'm still weak, right? I still could struggle. I could go back. I do think, not once an addict, always an addict, but I do think that AA has something where you can't trust yourself. Basically, you cannot trust yourself. So especially if we've gone a length of time without sex,
Which we don't, we try not to do now.
Every 3 days, give or take, a guy is ready to have sex again.
Under normal circumstances with no stress and
Sure.
without small children.
Without
and all that.
nymphomania and what have you. So every 3 days for guys and about once a week for the ladies is typical. And obviously you have some differing, some variation there. It all boils down to, do you want to stop looking at porn? And if you do, there are steps, there are things that you can do to prevent yourself from looking at porn. And if you're a wife watching this video, if your husband wants to stop looking at porn, just ask him. Like, do you want to stop looking at porn?
That's a scary question, though.
Yeah. He may say, no, I like it. And if we had a little diagram of if yes, there's a bunch of stuff if yes. We have a lot of answers. There are a lot of answers. There's a lot of hope. If no, it basically stops there. Because you can't control him. You cannot control your husband. You can't control anyone.
And you can't change a heart. The Holy Spirit changes hearts.
Yep.
And the Holy Spirit had to change Josh's heart.
Basically, if no, the only box under that on the diagram would be pray.
Yeah, pray that he would get caught. Pray that something would happen, that work would rain down on him, that the Lord would do a mighty work in his life, even if it comes to, like, worst comes to worst. Like, even, it's better for his soul to be set free than for him to be dying in this addiction every day, lying, dragging you down with him, affecting your kids, generational curses and all that stuff. Like, that's been the most life-giving change to me, is just to think that we're breaking this stuff off of our family. So what kind of groundwork are we laying for our kids?
I'm excited to talk to our kids about sex.
Yeah, me too.
In a weird way. And I thought about that today. This is the first time I thought about this because Grace is 4 now. And I was thinking it's 5 years until she's 9. And
That's terrifying.
yeah. And about 8 or 9, I was reading the other day, about 8 or 9 is when most kids are exposed to porn for the first time. Obviously, some kids earlier. We were both earlier. I'm looking forward to giving them perspective and giving them the talk because I never got it until it was too late. And then I had already learned most of what I had learned from the computer,
Right.
from porn. And that is the most perverted and distorted image of sex ever created. God's image of sex is something totally different from what you're viewing on the screen.
So true.
What you're viewing on the screen is an absolute perversion of what God originally designed for good. There is nothing good about porn. There's nothing healthy about porn. It should be viewed as dark and demonic. One thing I thought of, coming from the charismatic church, the kind of the devil made me do it thing. We kind of throw that around, and the enemy. I'm just fighting the enemy, and he's just winning. He's just winning this battle in my life. And it's like, no. You have the decision. You have the choice. Basically, what your husband needs, what the man needs, is a win. He needs a win. He needs a W. That's all. One small win. So if he can win in not looking on his phone, okay, well, then he figures out how to look on his laptop. And he realizes, okay, this is a bad thing. And then he comes to you, and you destroy him. He's never going to come to you again. If he comes to you and he's like, hey, my laptop, we need to lock it down too. Somehow, some way, we need to lock it down. Have you struggled? Have you messed up? Yes. Well, let me just absolutely rip into you.
Just the fact that he's coming to you.
Like, you've got to give him some credit for that. If he does that, he wants to be free. Please don't destroy him for that, because you want him to keep coming to you. And as difficult as it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's extremely hard. I feel like I'm just coming out of a lot of the jadedness from the past, 10 years or so of dealing with this, because we're 4 years free in our marriage. And I think from the wife's standpoint, you've got to get healthy. You have to get in a good place mentally, physically, emotionally. If you are looking for validation from your husband and he's looking at porn, honestly, he's not going to fill that cup. You got to get your cup filled from Jesus and Jesus alone during those seasons. And anything that your husband would do on top of that is just extra. And there's so many wives that put their marriage and their husband on a pedestal, and then they're completely shocked when everything comes crashing down.
You don't want to stop looking at porn if you're not willing to lock it down. At least for a season. Commit to a season of locking your phone down, locking your devices up, get a big lockbox that holds your laptop, your iPad, everything that you can possibly look at porn on, because that's what it is to you. That's what it's become. Those devices have become porn devices. You don't do much of anything else on those devices. Maybe check scores on ESPN or check the news. You're spending 45 minutes in the bathroom away from your family, looking at porn. Decompressing. But it's my time. This is my time. Yeah, that's the other thing. Privacy. You've lost your right to privacy. You got married. You don't have privacy anymore, especially in the marriage bed, and anything that comes to directly affecting your spouse. You've lost privacy.
Because you guys are one.
You two have become one. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined together with his wife, and the two shall become one, Scripture says. The wife's body is not her own, and the husband's body is not his own. But basically, your wife's body is yours, and wives, your husband's body is yours. You have to submit to one another, your bodies, in the marriage bed, and as it pertains to pornography, you have lost your right to privacy, guys. This isn't the Constitution of the United States, doesn't apply to your marriage.
Yeah, and another practical side of locking everything down, I would say align your bedtimes. I don't know why one spouse stays up so late when another one doesn't, or why one wakes up so early when another one doesn't. Especially if everything's open, if all the devices are open. I don't know why wives are so surprised if they go to bed at 9 and their husband goes to bed at midnight. I mean, what do you think he's doing? He's working? Sure. He's watching sports? I don't know. I don't understand.
No, he's probably looking at porn.
Yeah. If not porn, he's scrolling on Instagram, looking at fitness models or looking at some bikini girl,
which is porn.
Right. When we say porn, we also we mean multiple levels of it.
Softcore, hardcore,
hardcore,
all of it.
Yeah, and so aligning your bedtime, so locking down the phone, getting a lockbox. When we say a lockbox, we bought a small lockbox. Did you get it on Amazon or from Home Depot or something? I don't know. We bought like
I think we found it at
an
Amazon.
aluminum lockbox that I had the code to the, what do they call that? Padlock. What do they call that? A combination
Get
lock.
a small safe.
Yeah.
Anything.
They make biometric safes. You can do it with your thumbprint if you want to do it quickly. Only program your thumbprint. Obviously, this is not your husband's lockbox. This is your lockbox wife or your lockbox accountability partner. Find ways for them to have company, for them to have accountability around them, for them to have eyes. Some wives get cameras. If you need to go that far, go that far. We never took that measure, but some people who are extremely deceptive. Josh is not extremely deceptive. I know there are personality types.
I'm a horrible liar.
Yeah. He hoodwinked me there for a few years, but then I was like, wait a second, you suck at this. And then I could tell. Now I know. Oh, yeah.
You also lied to me, though, for 3 years.
Oh, yeah. And
about faking orgasms.
Yeah, we'll talk about faking orgasms.
We'll talk about faking O's. Don't be faking O's, ladies.
Well, it's like if you have watched porn, they're all fake anyway. So you learn how to act. You'll be good with the boys. Boys will like you.
Husbands, your wife could be faking her orgasms.
Yeah. It's actually like statistically, it's really sad. It's very highly likely. And men too. Men fake them too, which is wild to me.
What is that? What is that thing? This is a service bulletin announcement or something like that. What is it?
But wait. So my last thing I wanted to say
Red
was
alert.
texting the opposite sex is pretty much a no. Like if you're married, sorry, you lost your right to communicate with the opposite sex. And you can argue, you should watch. There's so much on this on YouTube and stuff, but it's just pretty much known. You get like talking to the it's not appropriate. We have friends over the years that have let this boundary be fluid and they have not been careful, and adultery always makes its way in.
And you can delete texts. And you can delete conversations.
So if you do need to text the opposite sex and you're in the same church circle or whatever, just include your spouse in it. This is such obvious advice to me now, but I remember our mentor told us this, what was it, like probably 8 years ago. And I remember thinking like, oh, why does he need to like do that? But now looking back, it is just some wisdom that you need to employ in your life. If you are not already, start today. Stop texting the opposite sex. Include each other in every single text thread with the opposite sex.
And if there's been an emotional affair, you've got to get that to the light as well. You guys need to talk about that. That doesn't need to come up in 10 years.
Yeah, therapists call it disclosure, like the first disclosure day, D-Day. But then people end up having so many disclosures. And we had several in a row. Yeah. The cycle was bad. I mean, it was like over and over until we put these measures into place. And that's why we're so like, we want to talk about it because we're like, oh my gosh, we finally got out of that crazy loop.
So the freedom that you feel after it all comes to the light is just unexplainable. I can't tell you the freedom that you're going to feel. You're going to find out here pretty soon. Especially if it's the first time. The first time is the worst. It is painful and it is difficult, but it has to be done. Well, and not even to mention, like we haven't even talked about what led you to ask me the question usually. Like, why did you usually ask me? Like, what led to the disclosure? And you asking me, are you okay? Have you been struggling?
It was because I started praying for him and I felt like I always had like a feeling.
And you still ask me to this day. Like if I'm down or if I'm mad for no reason really.
Yeah, if Josh had like any crazy emotional moments or like just negative in general, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? Have you done something? What have you been looking at? What are you doing? And sometimes there would be an answer, but more often than not, which is insane over the past few years, it's been a no. So like we've said in the previous video, if you are looking for radical change, if you're looking for your spouse to finally break out of this gross cycle that you guys are stuck in with fighting and arguing and hurt and pain and body image issues and sex issues and lying, if you're looking to get out of all of that, it starts with a taste of freedom, and the addict is not going to taste freedom without boundaries being put in place by someone who's outside of themselves. Probably they're an addict for a reason. They lack self-control for a reason. So they're going to need help. And I would ask wives that you would humble yourself and that you would just give it a shot. If you have exhausted all other efforts, if you are at your wit's end, what does it hurt to try one more thing? Let's try doing something radical this time, and let's get serious. And your husband, if you guys just try it, just ask them, do you want to be free? Do you want to try this thing with me? I'm on the brink of divorce here. I'm on the, whatever you have to say. If these measures, I would say these are kind of like rock bottom measures. I think for women who don't quite realize the severity of the situation, don't even think that they need these measures.
I disagree. I don't think it's a rock bottom measure.
Oh, you, okay.
Absolutely not. I think this is a preventative thing. I think this is absolutely, even if your husband doesn't struggle with pornography or says he doesn't struggle, I would lock his stuff down. Absolutely.
So many wives just think the best of them.
Well,
and I had a wife tell me that.
Let
She was
me
like, we
tell you.
always just give our spouse I just give my spouse the benefit of the doubt. And I remember being so jealous of her at the time because I was like, how can you just give him the benefit of the doubt? He's probably screwing you over all the time. And who knows if he was or not. But I tried giving Josh the benefit of the doubt, and it kept backfiring until we put these parameters into place. I mean, I remember the morning that it dawned on me that the Xbox was the last gateway. And I was like, are you joking me? I thought we were fine. Like, literally one time, just to be frank, I was filming a YouTube video 2 rooms over, and Josh had been looking at porn while I was filming a video, and he told me that. And it was like, that's what it took for me to realize, like, oh, we got to shut it all down then. And I would argue against what maybe you disagree, but I don't think people realize the weight and the gravity.
Well, we didn't realize it, but if we would have had this resource, like if you're locking down his phone,
get serious now,
right,
people.
Get serious. If you're locking down his phone, go ahead and lock down the Xbox. Get the Lockbox. Just be safe. Because here's the thing: as soon as the phone is no longer the way,
that's
then
true.
Everything else becomes the way.
That's
so you lock
true.
down the phone. Okay, now he can't look at porn on his phone. Then he starts looking at porn on the TV. Okay, then you lock down the TV. Then he starts looking at porn on the Xbox. Then over and over and over again, he's going to find a way to look at porn.
Some random tablet that you have in a drawer somewhere.
He'll find
some
it.
Old phone.
He will find it. Literally, I remember, and I am not kidding you. I remember frantically searching. This is an addiction, people.
Yeah.
I remember frantically searching, and I'm getting emotional. If you don't think this is an addiction similar to drugs and alcohol, you are naive, and you need to go do some research on the effects of porn on the brain.
There's withdrawals.
I was frantically searching for a phone that I knew was in the house that was not locked, that I could look at porn on while you were gone one time. And this was years ago. But I remember frantically, I'm telling you, like searching high and low, pulling everything out, and being meticulous with putting it back so it looked exactly like I left it. Opening all the drawers. Where is this phone? Where is this phone? I need it. And then never found it. But just frantically searching. That is the depth of the depravity that we are dealing with here. That I am dealing with in myself. That if I let it go, if I let it run rampant, it would be right back there. I'd be right back to square one, frantically trying to get my fix. And to comfort myself, if you think that you're immune, if you think that your husband is immune, if you think that this isn't a problem, and it is plaguing our marriages, it's plaguing our church, and it's making the church basically
weak,
useless for the kingdom of God.
Men of God, ineffective. Men of God living in shame and guilt and lies.
Yeah, lies.
Secret sin is just such a plague.
My conscience was, there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ. Romans 8, verse 1. But you feel condemnation. And you feel guilty. And I think that's healthy to some degree. You should feel the weight of your sin.
I remember thinking, like, when it says we're surrounded by a great cloud of witnesses, like if I had like looked at porn and masturbated, I would like feel so yucky, like thinking like of all these heavenly people that I'd known who'd passed on and good people in my life. I'd be like, ugh, they like saw that, like, ew. Yeah, just like a deep level of, it's hard to feel close to God when you're running from him.
Amen.
In that.
Yep. You'll get a lot of things back whenever you stop looking at porn. Whenever you start to lock yourself down, you'll get a lot of things back. You'll get confidence. If you're a man, you'll get testosterone. You'll get sex hormones back. Your libido will come back. You'll be attracted to your wife again.
I think also like that protector of a man that is that's healthy comes out. Yeah. Like protector over our daughter, over our son,
Yep.
over me, over other women too. Like Josh getting the door for other women, and like not like he's just being a good man.
Yeah.
He's not being like a creep, you know, or looking out for a girl who like someone is kind of like preying on. That's good and healthy. That's a healthy form of masculinity.
Amen.
that matters.
Yeah. I mean, you can, on the spectrum of pedophile and predator to warrior and protector, the guy who is addicted to porn and constantly looking at porn is going to view every woman he sees as an object. And eventually that becomes predatorial behavior. You know, it starts with porn. Most of your serial killers, all of your school shooters, very regular porn users.
It's because you're dehumanizing people. Right.
Yeah. People are objects to be done with, whatever you would have, to do with them.
This is so much bigger than just pixels and just a pastime hobby. It's not funny. It's not a joke. Like I remember in high school, they passed around 2 Girls, 1 Cup, that dumb video that's so disgusting. That was passed around like in my 9th grade classroom. Like it's more than just like something that's funny to 15-year-olds. It's like family wrecking, life altering, brain altering crap. And it's something that we want to just give you guys tools to put in your tool belt, normalize the radical measures that need to be taken to fight it. Things that have worked for us that we can honestly say that we are walking free and pure, and we feel good about the measures that we've taken, and we're not going to change them anytime soon. And we might get a little lax with a TV remote here and there, but I ask every single time still. I ask, do you want me to take the devices? Are you okay with me leaving this one device here? Yeah. All other devices are gone. Or other times I'll say, I'm leaving the house. I have all the devices. See you later. And that's the way we've chosen to live, and I think it has brought good fruit.
Yep.
And we wanted to share that today with you guys.
There is hope for you, for your husband, or you and your wife. You, a single person struggling with porn addiction. There is hope. There's absolutely hope. Hope in Christ. If you're not in a church, get in a church. This coming Sunday.
No matter how bored you are, no matter how many lack of connections you're making, we've been there too, guys. We've been in seasons where it just doesn't make sense. Church is extremely inconvenient, but biblically, we believe that it's an expectation that is set for a believer. You do not forsake gathering, and we do not forsake it. We stay in church.
If there's even a little bit of you or a little bit of your spouse that wants to save your marriage, there is hope. And marriage is absolutely worth fighting for, and we're going to be here to help you and to give our story on how
and fight the good fight,
how we've done it, and continue to fight the good fight. We'll see you next time.
Yep. Y'all have a good time of day, whatever time of day it is for you. Bye.